this computer. There we go. Okay, so we should be recording. So here we go. It's a revised new client intake. I'm going to pop down to the only slide that's in here. And then I want to walk over and show you where this stuff is at and how to get to it and so forth. So let's go ahead and take a look under Smart RIA. I've set my role as an advisor, so you don't have to be an administrator or anything. This is the stuff that you would see in Smart RIA. You go over to Documents, Company Files, and Client Intake. Now, here's what you're going to find. You're going to have your own little folder down here. And each one of these are custom. They're not the same. You know, some of the documents are the same, but some of the documents have to be customized for you. And we're going to go with this dude here, Vern Bell. And these will all be the same. From this point, these will all be the same file number, file name, and so forth. So there's nothing there that's any different. So this folder is your documents, but in order to get them into Smart RIA, into a client folder, you really need to go ahead and take them out to your desktop. So kind of create a folder out there somewhere. This is where I did. You can see this users, desktop, intake, and then I've got me, and I've got the other folders for everybody else as well. I have some extra notes that I've left in here, but here are my 4 documents. And the reason I want these is because I want to drag and drop those into Smart RIA where they need to be with the client folders. Let's walk through the documents one by one, and then we'll actually go ahead and take a sample record and do that. The advisor contract, this is the only document the client must sign. That's it, one document, and they're good with us. Now, I can't say that for Morningstar necessarily, but for us, this does it. And ours always has to be signed, even if they're just working with Morningstar because of the regulations. So let's take a look at that. Investment advisor contract. I think I had it up here. Right? That's it. So the investment advisor contract, if you take a quick scan, we're going to read this whole thing, but there are a couple of things that are kind of important. And on page 4, item 17, disclosure brochure. So this is your ADV part 2. The client acknowledges receipt of part 2 of Form ADV. This wording is required wording that you can't even change a comma on this without getting in trouble with the TSSB. So, but this is a statement. The client is saying, I did get the ADV part 2, which is what we're required to do. So there's no need to have the client again sign something else saying we need the ADV, you know, just that would be nonsense. So that's what that looks like. The other part in this, I need to mention that I need to sign this, and I can do that via DocuSign. What I've done is I've printed this thing off and signed it and then rescanned it back in and marked it as fully executed in each case. But that does need to be signed by me because I am the only officer that can do so at this point in time. And it's not a legitimate contract that would be enforceable for the client. Identification of key terms, this Exhibit A, you can use this to go ahead and list some of the key things like the annual income and so forth if you want. There's another place you can do that too, or you can do it in Smart RIA, or you can do it in the CRM. If it's in CRM, it'll migrate over to Smart RIA. I don't really care where it's at. I just have to have it because it's required to be there. So there's fairly updated here. We've got the strategies, and then we've got a place for an investment policy statement, which could be attached, of course, to separate document. But that's all in there. If it is Morningstar, then of course the proposal is what rules for the broker dealer. And then list your management fee. So that's just about it. I would note that the privacy policy is always attached. We're required to distribute the privacy policy once a year and at the time of the contract. So it would be silly not to make it as just one document, and that's the way it is. So client transmittal, it's another little document. The client doesn't have to sign it. But let's take a look at it real quick. Go back over here, client transmittal. And, you know, it's just I know you know this, but I'll just mention it anyway. If you're using this is Chrome, I think for Firefox too. It'll bring it up generally in a window. You can't do much with that. You want to download that, you know, if you're trying to get to the blank document and put it somewhere and use it in Adobe. This document has a lot on it. Originally, it was going to be, when Jan gave it to me, it was going to involve client signatures, and just none of that was necessary. I kind of we straightened that out. But all of this investment directive stuff, now you may have that in the contract, and if you do, that's fine. If it changes, it helps me a lot if I have this on file. I can technically take an email and do this, but it's a lot nicer just to have something that you've put in there officially that says, here's what we want to do. And then I made a note here, the following information is not needed if it's been provided in the TE advisory contract, Exhibit A. So you don't need to, but if you didn't get it in there, you can add it at this point and just sign your name and scan it, and then we're good on that document. And we just did that. There's a copy of the ADV Part 2 and 2B, both yours and mine. And they're all attached here. So you don't have to go find these and pull them together. It's one big PDF. Here we go. A little slow connection for some reason. So this acknowledgement of delivery of Form ADV Part 2 disclosure brochures, it's not necessary to have that signed by the client since they signed that on item 17 of the contract. We're good. But it is a notation from you, the advisor, saying, here's what I did. So you've confirmed that you did distribute that. And if you didn't get it in on the date of the contract, you want to make a note here by indicating the date that you did get it in, you know, if later than the contract. And that's important because the cancelability of the contract hinges on that date, whichever is later. And that's all there is to that. You know, just go ahead and upload the document. You don't need to sign it necessarily. You don't need to put a date on there if you sent this, the ADV Part 2 in when the contract was signed, and that'll be the case in most cases. That's pretty light. That's really the majority of the document stuff that becomes necessary. I am now going to walk through something quite simple here. We're going to look up one of my favorite clients, test record, not test client. So we're going to test record. And so this is where, if you did this better than I did it and got into Redtail or something, all of that information that we would have added in a document, you may not need that information if it's already in here. But the files is where we want to go. And we simply want to go drag and drop. So we take this and should be able to do that from here. Investment advisor contract. Assume this I've gotten signed. Obviously, this one's not signed. There it goes. Client transmittal. There it goes. The ADV Part 2 receipt. There it goes. And I'm just going to go ahead and load up an ADV Part 2, the document that I actually delivered. So we'll know what version it is and so forth. And we should be in good shape from our perspective, that is from TEA's perspective. Now, what do we need to do here? Well, I need to be notified as a CCO that both a client and we have documents that need to be reviewed. So what you'll want to do is say, okay, what are the required documents? Well, let's go ahead and pop into this client contract. That's what that is. And just submit that real quick. The client transmittal. And that's the portfolio manager transmittal, same thing. The ADV Part 2 receipt, and the actual ADV Part 2 and B. And I don't have that in here.
It's not required.
See, yeah, it's not required. But you could easily do that and just leave it in there. And I recommend doing that. So you can say, here's the thing that I delivered. Boom, it's in there. You just don't have anything that you're connecting it to here. So here's one that we don't have in here. Normally I think when you start the relationship with the client, you get a risk tolerance. You can get that from Morningstar as well and use their 2 pages of risk tolerance and drop that in there. I like the Sherman one. So there's one more thing that I need to mention, and that is this ADV Part 2 log. This is kind of important to me. It's going to save me a lot of time if you'll do this when you're done. Go out here, and it's right in here under quick access forms. So this is part of why I'm able to get away with not having people sign the ADV Part 2 or an ADV Part 2 receipt or anything like that. The code is written such that you're required to have an ADV Part 2 log. And that consists of the information that's in here. It's a pretty brief form. I maintain that log, keep it in an Excel file that's password protected. And all you need to do is, just go ahead and fill this thing out. So let's just say today is the 30th. And this is Mr. Record, right? Yeah, Record. So here's what happens. I always see this every day. I come in and look at this. Oversight queue, client files to review, right, and forms. So this dude here put in an ADV Part 2 log entry. So now I know I'm going to go out, I'm going to grab the spreadsheet real quick off of SmartRA, update it and re-upload it and all of that. And it's just a safety to make sure that the log is current and complete, and it helps me a lot. But